Let's start. As I stand in the east and the first rays of sunlight dance upon the horizon. So the east, that's that furthest most point on the medicine wheel. The very first ray of light coming over the horizon. The magical place of the beginning of life. Maybe, again, pre-birth, preconception. Where is this magic thing occur? And again, that could be the Garden of Eden kind of thing. Or it's in the kingdom. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom. And let's take a look at how this person feels. I feel welcome. I feel connected. Bingo. Pay attention to that word. I feel connected. I feel like I belong. How's that sound? How would you like to feel welcome, connected, and like you belong? That sort of brings up a warm and fuzzy feeling, right? I feel welcome. I feel connected. I feel like I belong. Here's my thought. There's a concept called original wholeness. And that refers to, I'm not exactly sure. I read it I think I read it in Harville Hendricks's book. And original wholeness. A fetus in the womb is experiencing original wholeness. A baby in the womb has no comprehension of unmet needs. Think about that one. It doesn't know what it's like to be too hot or too cold. It doesn't know what it's like to be hungry. It never goes hungry. And it's blissfully suspended in a watery world for 9 months, nurtured by one thing. Anybody guess where I'm going with this? The consistent, soothing sound of the mother's heartbeat. And I don't know if anybody picked up on this. Every once in a while, people pick up on this. The symbolism in that little video we watched, all the way to the sounds. The sound, the rain stick creating the water sound, the drum beat creating the heartbeat sound. And I imagine an infant suspended in bliss. 9 months of bliss. I feel welcome. I feel connected. I feel like I belong. That innocence. It doesn't know what it's like to be angry yet. It doesn't know what it's like to be scared yet. But then the next sentence, yet I know I'll be leaving this place as it's time for my journey to begin. On some level, this person knows I don't get to stay here. So to me, again, that's the baby in the delivery room. Any second now, bam, I'm going to hit the delivery room floor. They're literally going to slap me in the ass and make me cry. And then it's game on for the human experience. You know, sometimes we talk about it's not a human being having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And to me, that's what this is saying. I know that I'm getting ready to start this human experience. And then it says, just as the sun rises out of the east and makes its way across the sky, I know that I too have a path. I gotta leave. I'm the hero leaving the kingdom. I'm separating, I'm losing my connection. And, you know, I included the word trauma in that roadmap. And a lot of people are familiar with the idea that, you know, in recent years, trauma has become more and more identified as an integral piece that we need to address when we're talking about recovery. And again, I'm not an expert on this. There's professionals who know a heck of a lot more about trauma treatment and recovery than I do. So again, I may know just enough to be dangerous. I'm an armchair quarterback. I have this little thought in the back of my mind. The way that I understand this, When I think that some people will make claims or suggestions, some of the experts in this, that we all have experienced trauma to some extent, I think this is what the trauma is: the original separation. How can that not be a traumatic experience? I have kicked out of the garden. Again, not an expert. I throw that out as a suggestion. The original traumatic experience comes with the separation. And then it's game on. As the person says, I don't know what the path holds for me. There may be dangerous places along the way. There may be painful places. That's having to go down inside myself, have to go take my lumps. I'm going to go through this process of trying to find myself, and I don't do it in a guided, healthy way, and I end up making mistakes. And recognizing the mistakes is part of that dangerous, painful process. Yet just as the sun must give itself away to the darkness that it may rise again, that's going to be that death place, that death to the old self. Last week in the Carl Jung story, I talked about, Bill Wilson described recovery process as ego deflation at depth, followed by a spiritual experience. That's the ego deflation at depth. But we have to move into the darkness, going around there into the west on the medicine wheel, the place of looking within. It's the bear going into the cave in the fall, getting ready for the long, dark time as he goes through the winter in the darkness, going within to examine myself. And that might be painful to honestly look at what's going on with me, right? But if I'm able to get through that, yet just as the sun gives itself away, that it may rise again, I know that I too will one day return to this place. I have a hunch I'm going to get back to this place. Even before I leave, I know I got to go, but I think this is going to be a process of me getting back to this place. And then, what does it say? This place which feels like home, this place which is the beginning of life, this place where the voices greet me singing, "Welcome, for you deserve to be here." I got to tell you, as I read that last line there, I've done this hundreds and hundreds of times in groups with treatment clients. We've watched this video, we sit with the workbook in front of us, we read these lines, and people talk about what lines stand out to them or what they relate to. And I will tell you that one of the most frequent lines identified by treatment clients, people who have developed and are struggling with addiction, is they land on that last line. They say, "Welcome, for you deserve to be here." And people will say, "That sounds really good. I would really like to feel that way." That to me is the most important thing. So to wrap this up, I'm going to suggest that by putting this out here, again, me working with treatment clients over the years, I will usually suggest I use this to open the door, following on the heels of the Carl Jung talk last week when he said our addiction is the same as our desire for spiritual connection. And what this is showing us today is, I believe, that we all came from this place of a mystical experience. As I stand in the east, I'm blissful and this is awesome. It's mystical almost, right? Well, does drug use create sort of a mystical experience? Yeah. Changing how I feel is a mystical experience. And I suggest to people that I end up working with in addiction treatment, I think that that's got something to do. This addiction is on the same plane as our desire for that spiritual experience. And ultimately, so, if we go back to, let's go back to this to wrap up here. We get into our addiction, the recovery, look, we don't get to the connection right away. I put this word recovery in here because we have to go through the process and have the discipline and the patience and the responsibility. That's the bear going into the cave for the long, dark winter, going through this whole thing from the west to the north, going through the death, recognizing the things that I need to change in my life, again, patiently, continually being responsible and accountable, then ultimately we get to this place of connection. And it's not, I'm not the first person to say this is catching on in the last couple of years. A lot of people are becoming familiar with the concept that the solution to addiction is connection. And hopefully this talk has put that in a little bit more clear perspective or context of what this connection really means. Now, does that mean I have to go to the top of the mountain and burn incense and chant with the monks to have a spiritual connection? No, that I think connection exists on a spectrum, just like the addiction spirituality connection in itself. On one end, we can have high religious experiences, and they talk about burning bush experiences. I had one of those, and everything changed in a blinding flash. Yeah, I had one of those. The AA book feels it's so important to identify the fact that not everybody has that experience. And they talk about spiritual experiences of the educational variety, meaning a long, slow process that over time I gradually change. And then one day I realize, you know what? I'm different. They call that the spiritual experience of the educational variety. But so just like we could have spiritual experiences and develop and define our own spiritual program and belief system that works for us. That's great if you can do that. But does that have to happen? No. How about the other end of the spectrum? Connection is just talking with another person. How about interaction with another person? One of the reasons that self-help groups are so valuable and effective is because they create connection. I know for myself, I can sit in my office all day and work and stay distracted and get working, and I can make a phone call or get a phone call from a friend of mine who's in recovery. And we talk a little bit. I take my work stuff, put that on the back burner, and I talk about recovery for a second. Bam, I'm making a connection. And that's just a little piece, right? I'll take this out of here. And so connection starts with just being with other people. One of the things that happened with the advent of the 12-step help groups, and other kinds of peer support groups is the fellowship that developed. And when we're walking parallel paths with other people who are finding their way on their own spiritual journey, there's a unique bond that occurs that can, be identified as connection. And then ultimately, to wrap this up, I'll suggest, like I said at the beginning, it only makes sense to effectively identify or enhance our solution. And in this context, our question, what are we looking for through addiction? Okay, the problem is we want something. And again, lots of times people going into treatment, beginning this process, I know I need to stop drinking. I'm driving everybody crazy. People are throwing me out of their life. I need to stop drinking. And that might be our awareness of the problem at that point. The problem is I'm drinking too much. It's hurting people. Solution, I need to stop drinking. So you can see by growing in our understanding, becoming more clear the depth of what this problem underneath? Oh, I'm trying to satisfy that desire that I remember vaguely in my subconscious of that time when I did feel spiritually connected and I felt like I belonged, etc. That's what I'm trying to achieve through these misguided attempts. When I understand that more clearly, it only makes sense that I'm going to be able to take that into my efforts at solving the problem and creating the solution. And that sounds sort of heady the way that I'm saying that. Bottom line is, it can enrich my recovery or inspire me to add things that enrich my recovery, when ultimately I know I want to have a mystical experience and I want to feel connected and I want to feel like I belong. And being aware of that's what I'm moving towards, or identifying, then taking credit or giving credit for that is happening in my life, that can, I think, serve to inspire and continue. And then it becomes, it compounds, it increases exponentially in terms of growing spiritually. So again, to wrap up, we talked about our original wholeness. The human experiences, we get separated, we're going to lose that spiritual connection, we're going to lose our innocence. That can be a traumatic experience in and of itself, a psycho-spiritual traumatic experience. It's easy to fall into a trap of self-defeating behaviors in attempts to try to medicate or fill the hole from that traumatic experience. Getting into recovery is a slow, disciplined process of coming to look at myself and understanding I got to let go and make some changes, and understanding that that's what opens the door to a rebirth, a reconnection, reclaiming my authentic, my original self, And then I'll wrap this up in the 12-step program. Ironically, it isn't until the 12th step that they mention the term spiritual awakening. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. We've had a spiritual awakening as the result of going through this process. And then it says, we basically, in the medicine wheel, continue. Then we understand that life is a continual process of growth and change. And I get around that wheel one time, I still am going to keep going, and I'm going to go through ongoing changes, which means I got to do some more self-examination, identify more stuff that needs to be let go of, but that's going to lead to continued and more rebirth or renewal. So that's my talk today. I hope you got something out of that, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. See you guys.